What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe.
And Amy.
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we are here to review the Chapter 9 of The Gathering Storm by Django Wexler. If you are actually new here and this is your first one, this is Chapter 9, so there's many others. But before we start, let's do a quick review. I'm a little discombobulated, I apologize. But my quick review at the top is, this chapter was okay. It had some problems at the end, and I don't know how much the information that we were given, how much of it was new. A lot of it seemed to be kind of reiterations, because it seems like we're gearing up towards the Guild Summit, and so it's just kind of reminding everybody of everything that we've done along the way.
Right.
But the story has been doing a pretty good job of reminding us of that along the way. So I don't know how necessary this one individual chapter was compared to all the others. But that's me personally. This may be a take it or leave it kind of a situation.
Okay.
What about you? What are your thoughts?
I thought it was fine.
Okay.
Just fine.
So feel free to go and try to find the story if that is something that you would like to do. If you want to just stay here for our review, that's fine. But before we do our review, just one quick thing at the top. If you missed it last week, we have launched a second YouTube channel.
Yes.
There will probably be some kind of a video, maybe eventually at some point on here, directing you there. But if you just go to that channel, which we had, I believe, the subscribe button at the end of last week's video, and we should have it here as well. We launched it last Wednesday, the day before last week's JaAR came out. So you should definitely go and check that out. For your information, that channel will in no way affect JaAR. This will still be a show that we are still producing, and we will have more on that at the end. Again, having nothing to do with our second channel, just JaAR in general, with the Magic stories as they are today at the time that you are watching this. So definitely stay tuned for that. And if you're interested in video games, that is our second channel. Please feel free to go check it out. It will help us out a lot. The day before this video comes out, we are releasing our second episode in our first playthrough, Amy's first playthrough of Pokemon Red, the original from the Game Boy. So if that's something
so if you're not interested in video games, maybe check it out then as well.
That's fair.
Because I'm not interested in video games and I'm creating it.
Yeah. So definitely go check it out. It's going to be so much fun. That whole series has been an absolute blast.
Okay, I'm glad you've been liking it. I've been liking it too. So
exactly. So definitely go check it out. It's definitely worth, we believe, your time. Second thing and last thing prior to us starting, apologies. Our good friend Dave over at twitch.tv/DAM314, I was with him last night for the Weekend Wednesday, so you should definitely go check him out so that you can, if you go to his channel, you'll be able to at least see the VOD, the video on demand of me playing some Spider-Man on the PS4. It is a continuing adventure where Dave has formed a fantastic community over there of amazing people. And I say that now because if you go over there, they are going to be calling Spider-Man a murderer a lot. And so you need to understand that they're great people and that it's a hilarious, amazing time. I always have a blast going there and joining in with that group of fantastic individuals. So I highly encourage you doing that as well. Twitch.tv/DAM314. And then afterwards, if you like it enough, give them a follow. You guys, maybe if you know how Twitch works, just do all those great Twitch things. So, that all being said, again, apologies for the pile-up at the beginning. Let's get on to the full review itself of this story. This story went back to a model of jumping between the main characters. Ral, Vraska, Kaya, and the fact that it's a gear up towards something, I liked that a lot. I think it makes sense that you're like, this is what this person's doing, and this is what this person's doing, and this is what... So you need to see what all those people are doing because it's leading to something. So I liked that storytelling model, and I'm not sure whether I prefer it or not to all of them happening to be together, and so it's all from like one person's perspective. I don't know if that's even something that's relevant to say like I prefer this way versus that way, but it was, I think, a nice change of pace to go back to this method of kind of jumping between those.
I agree. I think it's easy now to say, looking back, that the method of trying to say that everyone was together and still see it from one perspective didn't work. But there might have been plenty of other factors contributing to that. So I don't know necessarily how fair it is to say that I like this version significantly more, but I do, at least based on the information that we have to base it on.
Okay, fair enough. And so we've talked about kind of my point at the beginning of like a lot of the stuff in this chapter felt like reiterations a bit. This chapter starts with a continuation from at the end of the last chapter, which was Rahl kind of in a flashback state, remembering to the time of his sparking. And the last time he was in that kind of a flashback, he was dreaming. So again, in this chapter, he starts by waking up next to Tomek in bed, remembering that kind of traumatic experience for him. And again, references, as we've been discussing, his issues with his relationship with Tomek, and how within his relationship with Tomek, they've been trying to keep guild business separate from their relationship, since they are higher up members of two separate guilds. And now that they've crossed that line, Rahl is really nervous.
Yeah.
And I actually really liked this part of this story and the way that it starts, because again, we've talked about their relationship and how their relationship seems and feels real. It feels like a real couple that are dealing with these kinds of things, and as opposed to like a fantasy couple with like, oh no, magic is interfering and whatever. Like,
well, I think that's just because it's an issue that couples have happened to them rather frequently.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. I like that it feels real, as opposed to it's a relationship in a fantasy setting, so wacky magic issues ensue where, oh no, your nose is really big now from the spell that you cast or something. Like, it's an actual relationship as opposed to, other stuff that could occur in a world where magic exists. And is seemingly so prevalent, as we learned with the other Ravnica stories that we were reading with the commoners, Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance, where magic was such a base part of all of their lives that it kind of seamlessly occurred, but was still, something that it doesn't seem like it is as inclusive in Rahl and Tomek's relationship. It just seems like a real relationship. So.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I liked that part less. I think because it was so normal. It was just a little boring for me.
Well, and
it's like, yeah, no, we get it.
Well, and it goes
okay.
It goes back to how this all started, which was Rahl and Tomek not mixing guild business with their relationship.
Right.
And there was a reason for it, and now Rahl is really nervous that now that they've done that is going to put a strain on their relationship. And Rahl kind of alludes to the fact, and this is something that I guess you could have assumed, but you didn't really know, but that this is the first real serious relationship, seemingly, that Rahl has been in since Elias, which is what caused him to spark when Elias cheated on him and was kissing that other guy. And go ahead, I'm sorry, you were gonna... No?
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So that is what leads me to say that it makes a lot more sense that Rahl is nervous about it, but I think it's a good thing that they finally did it, because now you know if it's real or not. That, I don't know. Me personally, I think that's an aspect of both of their lives, that they are high-ranking members of these guilds, and I think that them finally breaching that, imaginary line that they've painted for themselves really will show whether that is something that their relationship can stand or not, and whether it is meant to be a long-term lasting thing.
Okay, fair enough. On the flip side of that,
Please.
They really beat us over the head with the whole we shouldn't mix guild business with our relationship
It's true.
thing, and
It's
it
true.
was really annoying. And then now they're like, "Oh, we're doing it." That sucks.
Well, and again, I mean,
It's like I don't care.
because they brought it up, clearly it was going to be a thing one way or another.
Of course, but they could have brought it up once instead of 5 times.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, and that's kind of all that we get of that. Like, Tomek is asleep the whole time, and Rahl kind of kisses him and goes off and goes about his day. And then Rahl goes to his office, or wherever he's meeting. He meets with Hekara and Lavinia. And there is, again, I mentioned this the past 2 weeks, but Hekara was injured, and they have now sufficiently glossed over her recovery, which I'm fine with. It makes perfect sense. Again, I said if they felt that there was a need for them to talk more about her recovery than just the comment that Rahl makes of like, God bless those, is it goblins, that tend to do experiments on her or whatever. That's the extent of the information that we got about her recovery process, and that's just fine. Now she is back, right? And she was saying some little tidbits about it to Lavinia, but that was all that we got about it, and that's fine. She was gone, she was hurt, she's back. Okay, fine with me. And we get another discussion between Lavinia and Rahl about which guild leaders they can trust and which guild leaders they can't trust. So again, a bit of a reiteration,
right.
A bit of a reminder of what happened in the past. And again, I'm trying not to be too critical here, because we do this show, right? So we heavily analyze these stories, in this case, these chapters, to say, like, they're reminding us again, don't forget about this. And it's like, so this one chapter out of the first 9 that is reminding us about, not everything, but a lot of things that we've done to lead up to this point, which could be in a lead up to the Guild Summit, which is going to be probably a large sticking point thematically and in the story. It makes sense. So I'm not saying that this chapter is bad by any means. It's just for people like us who have taken the time to heavily analyze all 8 chapters leading up to this point, it is reiteration, and so it's like, okay, sorry, yeah, we kind of get it. So, for people who may have just been reading the book casually over some period of time, this chapter might be super helpful. But again, this seemed to be another reiteration of, hey, here's a reminder of who all the guild leaders are. Isperia is probably not involved, but we don't know about Aurelia, but it's probably not her either. But I'm Rahl, and I still don't trust Lazav. And so, like, they're still bringing up all these people. And don't forget, Kaya has now taken over the Orzhov instead of Teyza. So, now we have to figure out whether she's on our side or not. And it makes sense if in the next chapter or 2, they're at the Guild Summit, and so you need to now be reminded of all of their motivations and kind of questioning who you can trust.
Right.
Unfortunately, we know who's going to mess up the Guild Summit because these stories were released out of order, thanks, Wizards. So it's even less important now to hear we can't trust this person, we can't trust this person, because I guess arguably spoilers, if you don't know what happened in the War of the Spark novel, then tune out for like 30 seconds, but we know it's not Lazav, despite the fact that he's a super shady character. We know it's not, we know it is Veraska, even though this time around they barely talked about her, but Lavinia originally said, I don't think we can trust her. And again, we kind of see that at the end of the story, and we'll talk about that more. But, so that's kind of why it's like, okay, if this were the first book that we read, that would be super important information, where it's like, is everybody on the up and up? Did Bolus get to Aurelia? Did Dovin Bond's influence on Isperia create anything going on there? How is this all going to occur?
Right.
So that makes a degree of sense. And then we got a bit of a comedic moment where Hikara pipes up and she's like, yeah, I don't really trust that emissary from Rakdos. I don't know about you guys. And they like stop and look at her because I guess if you didn't realize, she's the emissary from Rakdos. And they like are upset that she interrupted for something that stupid. And she's just like, geez, I was just trying to lighten the mood. Sorry, you know, but which is very much Hikara, right? That's just who she is, or seemingly. But yeah, that.
But also, it just shows how boring the other two are. If you didn't already get it, which you did.
Speaking of boring, to appropriately transition, thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
Then we get.
Anytime you want me to talk about things that are boring, just let me know.
Then we get to Kaya. And Kaya is being given a speech by, being lectured by one of the Orzhov priests, a high priest of something, as she puts it, high priest or high walrus of whatever, of boringness.
He's the high priest of all the walruses.
Which is hilarious. I mean, that moment was really funny. Also, I wrote this down because it is something that Amy really appreciated, and I wanted you to be able to talk about this. But Kaya mentions at one point, I want to be able to read this correctly, she comments about, she being Kaya, comments about the degree of a person's importance, or at least their perceived importance, is correctly proportional to the size of the hat that they are wearing at any given time.
That's a real thing. Yeah, I mean, in religion and history, that's a real thing. If you don't believe me, look it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to remember the name of this book. It's like the 1,000 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins or something from Dr. Seuss. It's one that I've talked to you about this in the past. It's in 6 by Seuss. It was a book I read as a child, and it was a kid who went to a king, and when you are in front of the king, you remove your headpiece. And whether he was charmed or there was a spell or something, he removed his hat, and there was another hat underneath it. And he removed that hat, and there was another hat underneath that. And each time he removed a hat, because it was like a basic, peasant's hat with like maybe a feather in it. And by the end of the book, he removed so many damn hats that there was just, each hat was more extravagant than the last, with like more feathers or larger feathers. And he was like really insulting the king by doing it, but he had no control over it. And eventually they almost cut his head off, like they were going to execute him. But they couldn't execute the guy who was wearing a hat. Like they had to wait till he took his hat off. And he just kept taking hat off after hat off after hat off. So yeah.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I loved that book a lot as a kid. A lot. I'll have to read it to you sometime.
Okay.
I think it's still in my parents' basement somewhere, that book. But anyway, so yes, if you know the 1,000 or whatever it is, Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins, please leave it in the comments. Let me know.
Or if you know the real thing that I'm referring to.
Sure, you can talk about history too. Notice how I slinked away from that immediately. Again, Amy is the history buff. I talk about Dr. Seuss. Who's the smarter one here, I ask you. Anyway.
Okay. Moving on.
In history and religion. Yeah, but Dr. Seuss, though.
and that has far more significance.
Oh, God. Okay. Then Kaya mentions that she's been enduring speeches like this her whole life. Since she was a kid. And again, what's interesting? When we read that, Amy and I were both like, what could that mean? And then in the back of my mind, I was like, did we hear something about her nobility? Because I don't remember. I don't. So if you remember, first of all, please let us know. That would be great. That would be very helpful. But also, it kind of sucks because it means that if they did, if they told us about it, we don't remember it. And I'd like to remember something like that. I'd like to know her backstory this much because this, again, talking about reiteration, the story keeps hinting at it. Right. The story has reminded us now of Bolus fixing the sky. And there's something very wrong with the sky in her world. And...
Well, but there's... this is just yet another reason why the stories coming out in the right order consecutively makes a difference. because we're sitting here going, is this information that we're supposed to already know? Because we can't remember if we ever knew it to begin with.
Right. And if we did, was it from...
And they're making it seem like we should already know, but is it just because it's earlier on and they're going to talk about it later? It's hard to know because the order is all messed up.
Yeah. We'll talk about that more at the end. But yes, fair point. Then we get to some new information, some interesting bits where she's like, I gotta pee, and she leaves, and this, even though it's in like the middle of a ceremony.
Right.
And Taze is a little upset about it. And this old man kind of approaches
like,
her.
Like, bladders are a thing,
yeah.
and this guy just won't shut up.
Yeah. So she goes to go try to find the bathroom, or at least just get away from that situation in general.
Air.
And this old man approaches her and begs for her to forgive the debts, or his debt in particular, because he says that his children will inherit that debt if he doesn't, if it doesn't go away. And he mentioned that it was from like many years ago, and that that no matter how much he worked, there was just no way he was able to pay it off. So that was just. I get it. I feel you. So and she
real shit.
Right, and she also took pity on him, and so decided, you know what, I will forgive this debt for you, and she does. And you referenced appropriately when Amy and I were talking about this previously, there will likely be issues with that later.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because anytime there's a story where there's someone who has the power to help people with something as common and terrible as that, what happens is they help that one person because it was one person, and they were like, okay, I was able to help that one person. And then everyone and their mother comes out of the woodwork and is like, but you helped that one guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why is my story not as impactful to you as his? Mine's worse.
And of course it is.
Yes.
But the problem is, you can't. You can't.
Right. And speaking of which, one of the things that Kaya says to him, which, I mean, I would advise Kaya not to use this line going forward.
Yeah.
But that's because I live here and now, and it's not a realistic statement to make. But she says to him, if you didn't want to be in debt, you shouldn't have borrowed money. It's like, thanks.
Like, gee, thanks. Couldn't have figured that one out.
Sucker dude. It was very interesting. It was
That's the real clue that she's a noble.
Yeah, why'd you borrow money, poor person? I don't understand. Yeah, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was...
I'm not going to mention anything about like a person who might head up an organization that, is involved with schools or anything of that nature.
I had no idea where you were going with that. Nice.
Okay.
Okay.
I was hoping you wouldn't.
Well, I get it now.
Yeah,
So yeah, that I like when I heard that line, it was like, that's a very real statement that many people I feel like make, and maybe that's just my own bias, but it also, in that particular case and in many other real cases, seems not very realistic. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. If you believe that, you are absolutely... I'm not wrong, thank you. You are entitled to your beliefs. I do not agree with you, but I still respect you. So, then we go away from Kaya and Teza and their situation, and we go to the last, and that is Veraska. And again, we get a bit of a description of the underground areas that the Golgari are in, which I love. I love the descriptions that Django Wexler does. He's very good at it. The more information I can get about the world of Ravnica, the better. It's great. It's super flavorful. I love it. I'll take it all day. Great.
There's so much going on with it.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, really, really nice. And again, props to Django Wexler. He's doing a fantastic job.
World building has always been an amazing thing coming out of Wizards, so
yes.
I feel.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah.
I feel that's an aspect of the story that I can always appreciate, even when there's less of it, when it's not as impactful. That almost makes me appreciate it more because I want it more.
Right. And I don't know enough about the situation, but from my own opinions on how this has been working recently, extra props from me to go out to Django Wexler because of the fact that Ravnica is an established world, which means that there is a lot more backstory for him to have, either for him to have researched or been told about, and yet he has done a very, very good job of keeping it consistent enough where even though it is an established world, there are not people turning around and saying, well, you messed up continuity here and you didn't talk about this, or you said that this was the thing and it's definitely not. And I'm not talking about nitpicky things like he mentioned that there were, like if he said that there were 3 spires and there were supposed to be 4, that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about very blatant continuity issues that have occurred in the past with
And frequently do still occur.
with new authors writing about established areas, or arguably new authors writing about new areas and still not keeping continuity with prior stories. And this is
Or
an example,
or what have you.
right? Well, exactly. And this is an example of Django Wexler knocking it straight out of the park, and again doing a really, really good job of possibly introducing or attempting to introduce a new crop of individuals to Ravnica as a plane if they were not around for original Ravnica, City of Guilds, or Return to Ravnica, and or the stories for those sets in and of themselves. Man, it would sure be great if this had come out before War of the Spark, the novel.
Oh, yeah. I will say on the same vein as that,
Yes.
that I do have something to say when we get to that portion of it. But I do have something to say on how I believe Django Wexler did not carry that through in certain aspects.
Okay.
So when we get to that spot, I will reference it again.
Fair enough. Well, there is one last thing to talk about before we do get to that, and that is just the fact that we then, at the end of this story, get another moment of Nicol Bolas kind of taking over a vessel, a person on Ravnica, within which he can speak to Kaya and Veraska and Ral or whoever. In this case, it's Veraska. And Bolas kind of says to her, hey, you're not following our deal. And Veraska's like, the hell are you talking about? I did exactly what you wanted. I got you that thing on Ixalan. I sent it to you. Now I'm back here. I'm the Queen of the Golgari. You got me that. We're done.
Right.
And Bolas is like, no, we're not. Because now you're working against me. You're going to this guild summit. You're doing all this stuff. Don't. And she's like, she's very conflicted now. Because Bolas now knows about her returned memories. And he sees that she is plotting against him. And I am furious about it. Because it leads to... It makes sense the way that it is being written if you don't know the prior stories. It makes sense how it is being written that her helplessness in terms of I'm waiting for Jace because he and I were going to do this together,
right,
and he's not here yet, so how am I supposed to take on Nicol Bolas alone? I can't. And now he's threatening me and telling me I have to do these things, and so I'm going to have to do these things because I can't do anything else. I have no other options here. And so it makes perfect sense because, again, spoilers, I guess, we know that she is the one who betrays them at the guild summit, and now we can see her motivation for doing so in this timeline, which has very, very, very much, and I've said it multiple times, and I will continue to say it as they continue to screw it up, they have very much glossed over the wiping Veraska's memories, why they did it, and how she was not supposed to get them back until Jace showed up.
Right.
And honestly, you could have had Veraska betray everyone after or before getting her memories back, and then getting her memories back and feeling bad about it, except that then you would not have likely had her being so amicable to helping out with the raid on Orzova and all that other stuff, because she would very much be acting as a lone wolf and or just straight working for Bolas the whole time, and he would not have wanted her to do that either. So It's just very messed up at this point. And it's unfortunate because I've mentioned it, we've mentioned it in weeks past, and it just very much frustrates me. But that, I guess, leads to what you were talking about.
Right. I just think that as before you were saying that Django Wexler did a great job in keeping continuity and did great things in terms of that.
Appropriately setting the stages.
No. He at the risk of sounding like the story, he didn't really have a choice because he was told, look, this is what you have to do with the story now because we're putting the kibosh on what we've already said.
Right.
But there's a better way to go about it, I hope. I don't know. I just feel that it's not very Veraska, right? For her to be like, well, I can't really do anything because Jace isn't here.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point of those Ixalan stories, I mean, if you're gonna mess up that ending, right, where you're gonna mess up the fact that Jace deletes her memories and is gonna come back and reinstate them,
and
why screw up the whole rest of it as well? Where you literally, the newer stories are literally dependent on the fact that they have a relationship, yet you're going to put the kibosh on that entire story by now saying, oh, well, all that stuff about him treating her as if she's the captain was useless because now she's completely dependent on him, and the fact that he hasn't come back has made her powerless. She's now the leader of the Golgari. That was the whole frickin' point. She was a ship captain. She had a crew that depended on her in Ixalan. Now she's back on Ravnica, and she is the leader of the Golgari. She's killing people left and right and building her frickin' throne out of their dead bodies.
Which is so cool.
Which is amazing. I love it. I'm jealous.
Mm-hmm.
But
Amy wants the bodies of her individuals as her chair.
I do. No. Adversaries, I want you to feel my ass upon you.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
But anyway, it's so out of character at this point for her to be sitting there saying, well, I guess I have to do what Bolas says, because Jace isn't here to help.
Right. And
You had your random friend help reinstate your memories, and he's not even a powerful enough guy to have done that. No. So obviously you have people for this.
Right. So, and I would like to say, in my opinion, and my opinion alone, I don't, and I think you're getting at this, but I want to make it crystal clear from where I'm coming from. I don't put any of this on Django Wexler.
Okay.
Because I think he can only work with the information that he's given, and I think it was very clear the direction that the new story team wanted to go in for this. And by the story team, I mean like Nick Kelman and friends at Wizards, that's the direction that they wanted to go in with the War of the Sparks story and the killing of Gideon and the focus on Liliana and not at all on Jason Veraska, despite the fact that...
I hate it. I hate all of it.
Right. And it's, unfortunately, it's on one hand, it's unfortunate that we have to keep talking about it. On the other hand, we are moving on. And that leads us to my next and the final topic for today. By the time this episode comes out, the Wildered quest, I don't recall. I will try my best to remind myself how to properly pronounce that. But that book is coming out, the ebook, for $3.99. It is behind a paywall. There will not be online stories to supplement it at this time. We will spend the $4 to purchase that ebook. We will read it. And we will come to all of you with our review of it. When, you might ask? That is a damn good question. Because this ebook is being released prior to a lot of the cards are being spoiled for Throne of Eldraine, which is a nice thing. It's something that we've been asking for a very long time, which is we were asking for it in a very different way, which was to say, use your weekly stories to spoil cards.
Yeah.
So that people have to come to your weekly stories to find out what upcoming cards are.
Because, you know, it's good marketing.
And if you enjoy the flavor of it all, if people enjoy the flavor of it, they're going to stay to read it. As opposed to just showing up, scrolling down until they get to the card, taking a screenshot of the card, putting it on Reddit for everybody to see,
Right.
which is 100% going to happen regardless,
Right.
and that's fine. But if you're
still forcing people to the page.
And if the card is flavorful enough, and if somebody looks at that card and wants to know why that card is a thing that it
Right.
is, they're going to look at that story. The problem is, what they've done, instead of using the story to preview their cards or spoil their cards, or whatever you want to call it, now they're just putting out the story prior to preview season in general, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because now the cards aren't spoiling the story.
Right.
Because
that was a huge problem for a while.
And it's great that way now, because now people have the opportunity to read this story prior to the cards coming out, and you get to see when you see the card, you'll understand where that card has come from.
Right.
Whereas if you read the story, I think in the opposite, it is slightly less impactful. And so I prefer it that way, where you read the story first and then the cards harken you back to something that happened during the story. I like that more. I think that's more intriguing for me. The problem is, you have the story, the Wilder quest coming out for behind a paywall, which is unfortunate in and of itself, and I completely understand and am very sorry if any of you feel that that $4 is a barrier to you for getting this story, because I feel you, I feel for you, and I'm so sorry to hear that, because these stories are a free thing. The professor put out a video talking about it. As with many things, I don't agree with every point that he made, but I don't disagree with every point that he made. So if that is something that you're interested in, please feel free to go check out his video as well over at Tolarian Community College. Not sponsored, not asked to do that, just letting you know of information that is out there about this.
And $4 might not seem like a lot, but it'll seem like a lot years down the road when you're paying for $4 worth of every single story that comes out.
Right. And honestly, I don't think it's about the four. It's just another.
Yeah, it's not about the price tag. It's about the fact that there is one.
Yeah, exactly. Because there will absolutely be people who will respond and say it's just $4. There will 100% be people who feel that way, and I hear those people. But at the same time, I can't rightfully look at another human being who says, I don't want to pay $4, or I genuinely can't afford to pay $4.
Or I can't justify paying $4
And
for something like that,
Right.
because it used to be free.
Right.
And, you know, it costs enough for the cards and the everything else
And it's,
for this game.
Right. And it's not my place to look at anybody and tell them what is or is not something that
Affordable.
should fit into their budget. It's not my place. And so if you think that it's nothing, that $4 is not that big of a deal, and you could spend it, every quarter, presumably, right, if there's 4 sets a year, every quarter you have no problem spending $4. Great. Good for you. And yet, if you're the person who's like, I really don't want to have to toy with myself as to whether I'm going to be spending the $4 for this particular, is this story going to be good enough? Well, I don't know, because I haven't seen any of the cards yet. So
Right,
I don't know if it's worth it to buy the story.
Should I buy the story?
Yeah. And that's their selling point, right? It's the price of a pack of Magic. Oh, okay, great. I don't know a ton of people who buy packs individually, right? Like to draft with, sure, but then you're paying the entry for the draft event, not like individual packs. Most people who, I don't know. Each person is different, and that's not for me to say one way or the other. What I will say, though, the reason that we bring it up is these chapters are still going on. We're on 9 of 20. We're not even halfway through the way that we're doing it. I believe release-wise, I think they're up to 13, maybe less, but they're not at 20. They're not even at 15. by the time that this episode comes out. And yet, the Throne of Eldraine novel is also already out. I'm not even going to touch on the fact, or I guess I'm only going to touch on the fact, that the author of the novel didn't know when the novel was being released because there was either a typo or a miscommunication through Amazon on when the book was even coming out. What?
Yeah.
That's a different video for a different time, and that's not what
I wanted to talk about it.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I honestly just have gotten to a point where it's starting to seem like there's so many issues with all of these things that it almost seems like they're just trying on purpose to make us become disenfranchised with the stories so much that when they get rid of them altogether, we can't be mad.
I said that we said this.
I literally feel that way.
We said this a while ago. Because when Nick Kelman got on to Daily MTG or Weekly MTG or whatever the Twitch stream that they do now that is still awful, in my opinion, each and every time that they do it, that when he got on there and said that there weren't enough Vorthos fans reading the stories week to week on the website, and so they were going to have to do other things. So it was basically telling all the Vorthos that we weren't good enough, and that we weren't worth it to them to keep doing what they were doing for us, and or for their own brand.
Right.
And so they were going to be trying other things. And so they were going to try novels. They tried comic books.
Did they?
I mean...
I would have loved to have seen one.
They exist, and you can purchase them, and I know that there are viewers of this show who have purchased them because they've contacted us about it. But the delays that those comics have had occur with them... I don't know how anyone can put any kind of confidence in their return to comic books again. But it literally looks like they're just throwing their story at every possible medium that they can. They have the Netflix series coming out by the Russo brothers. They have the books for $3.99. They have the physical novels by Greg Weisman. They have these chapters being released way out of sync. They have the comics that were sequel comics to the War of the Spark novel that came out prior to the War of the Spark novel, but the prequel story that was supposed to come out actually prior to the War of the Spark novel came out after the War of the Spark novel, and then the War of the Spark novel was just shoved in there, and the sequel novel to War of the Spark is coming out after that, but not after, not
it's not so before, far after it.
Right, and not before the story for the set after War of the Spark.
Right. It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
And we've said that time and time again.
Right.
But the problem is that at this point I'm starting to feel like it's not even just poor management and inconsistencies and mistake after mistake after mistake. It at this point feels to me like it's deliberate. Like they on purpose legitimately just want to make us so unable to consume the stories and so mad about having to consume the stories in whatever ways we have to consume them, that they're just at some point going to do away with them altogether and know that we're not going to come up there, we're not going to attack them on Twitter with pitchforks and torches and say, how dare you take our stories away? Because at that point we won't even care. We'll already just be so damn annoyed that we won't complain when they just take them away completely.
Right. And I also understand that to a degree, we as content creators are more affected by this than most.
Right.
Because for some people it's like, whatever, it's $4, I'll buy the story, I'll read it when I can, I won't read it when I can't. When the new chapters come out, I'll read those too. I'll decide which I like more, maybe I won't even pay for the novel at all. And frankly, because I've seen many people say this, I'll just go to the internet and have somebody else explain to me what the story is, and if it seems interesting enough, I'll buy it. Otherwise, if I feel like I have enough information, then that'll be the end of it.
Right, and but without people like us to make these videos on it, there's no information on the internet, right? About how good it is, or what makes it good, why it's good, you know?
And all that being said, as I said, we will get the novels, all of them, at least for now.
We'll try.
We will. We've already pre-ordered Forsaken, which is the sequel to the War of the Spark novel by Greg Weisman. We have not yet, but we will. Well, at the time you're watching this, almost certainly we have gotten the ebook for the Wilder Quest for the Throne of Eldraine. I'm really looking forward to it. Kate Elliott did a fantastic job with Chronicle of Bolas, and that's the sad part of all of this. We just finished talking about like what's going on with this chapter that we just reviewed today, chapter 9, and saying, hey, you know, it's not Django Wexler's fault. That's what I said. I don't put it on Django Wexler. Well, guess what? It's not Django's fault that his stuff was released out of order, and it's damn good.
Right.
It's not Kate Elliott's fault that her story is the first one behind the paywall, and so not as many people are going to get to read it, because it's probably going to be a damn good piece of fiction. And I'm looking forward to it because her job on Chronicle of Bolas, she knocked it out of the damn park.
Yeah.
It was so good. Go watch our end of the year review for 2018. We talk about her a lot.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. But the management behind it is so
poor.
It's so disjointed. It's very scattered and it's very obvious, and it's a damn shame.
Yeah.
My main point to all of you, and why this matters to all of you, we will be doing JaARs on everything that we get. The Forsaken novel, for the War of the Spark Forsaken novel, the sequel novel, the Wilder Quest novel, the rest of these chapters. The only thing I can tell you, though, is that I cannot tell you when we will do it, because it is all based on our own time frame of things.
Right.
There's unfortunately, and
it's
with,
so random
well,
that we can only do what we can do.
And it's with a heavy heart and deep apologies that I have to say that. And again, as I said in the beginning, this arguably does not have anything to do with our second channel that we just started. It doesn't. Because I'll let you in on a little secret. We already have, we just uploaded like 25 videos the other day on that channel. We have all that stuff already for the next almost year. That's not how that works. It's 2 videos a week, so the next 3 months, 4 months. So that's not why we're not going to be able to read these stories and get them out to you quickly in JaAR episodes. It's just that, what are we making JaARs about? Are we interrupting these chapter reviews to now talk about the Wilder Quest because we want to and because we want to read it and review it before the cards start spoiling stuff from the story? And so unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be able to happen.
Right.
So if that's something that you're looking for information on the story prior to its release, I don't think we're the people for you for that, unfortunately, because I don't think we're going to have the time. And so I don't want you to be married to the idea that we are going to be those YouTubers to help you with that story. I just don't think it's in the cards for us, no pun intended.
Yeah.
We will do it. We will do a JaAR on the story in the future. It's gonna happen no matter what.
Right. And it'll be soon. It's just not gonna be before the cards are spoiled.
Before the cards are previewed. And Throne of Eldraine pre-release in like 3 weeks.
Right.
So, you know, we're not really going to be able to do that either. We've got stuff going on between now and then. We're doing more JaARs. We're doing other videos on this channel. And we highly encourage you to check it out. And with anything, it's been a while since I've asked this, but let us know what you want.
Right.
Would you, if like, you know, there's a ton of people who are like, screw these chapters, get us the Throne of Eldraine stuff. We'll do our best. I make no promises. I don't care if there are like 100 comments where they're like, just do the Throne of Eldraine book, forget it. Like, we're going to do everything that we can to try to make you all as happy as possible. You let us know what you want, what you're the most interested in.
Right.
Those JaARs, I can promise you, barring something catastrophic happening, I can promise you that those JaARs will come out. I just can't give you a definitive time frame, nor can I tell you that they will be happening prior to the set releasing, for example. It's just not really going to work out. But we will do our best. We're being thrown a lot of curveballs here that we did not expect, and we are going to try to swing for the fences to keep that analogy going as best we can. we're going to keep it coming. We have JaARs every Thursday. And that is how it's going to stay. I said that at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and I meant it. We're going to do one JaAR a week for as long as there is content for us to do JaARs.
Right.
We're
going to try not to phone it in and just come up with some random thing to talk about just because we need to have a JaAR.
Right, just because it's Thursday. But that also being said, it doesn't mean that now with more stories coming out that we're going to be doing 2 to 3 JaARs a week to cover everything.
Well, we got to do a JaAR every day. That's not going to happen.
It's not. And again, it has nothing to do with other YouTube channels or other projects or anything like that. I mean, we work full time as well, so
right.
it's just we're doing what we can. And we truly hope that because from comments that we've gotten from all of you, I don't doubt for a second that all of you understand that and can understand that. I don't think any of you have been cracking the whip and being like, "Where's our JaAR, guys?" You've all been so kind and respectful in the past, and so we just ask you, as these new things are occurring, please have patience as we are trying our best to deal with all of this, as many other content creators that we have seen and heard from are trying their best as well.
Right.
And
so we're asking you to have a little bit of empathy, right. Not just for us, but for the community as a whole, for those YouTubers specifically.
Yeah, and YouTubers, article writers, podcasters, and for those content creators in general, give them all your love, because this is very stressful.
This is the moment when we need it.
Yeah. It's very stressful, and it really does seem like a turning point, one way or the other, because that's really what it is.
Yeah.
It's a turning point one way or the other. So stand by the creators that you love. Let them know what your wishes are, but let them know that you support them if you do support them, no matter what, because there are some decisions being made, I think, across the board on this one. And
they're difficult ones.
Yeah, they're tough. So thank you all so much for listening. We have rambled on entirely too long, but I think that it was all important stuff. I just hope that we didn't ramble on for too long and reiterate stuff too much, because that's just what we were talking about. Well, I mean, right, exactly. I was just going to say we just talked about that with this chapter, so hopefully that was not too much. Thank you all, if you've gotten to this point in the video, for watching, for understanding, and for listening.
So much.
Like we said at the top, please feel free to check out our other channel. It's so much fun. There's no drama there whatsoever. So it's just fun, and it's been, like I said, it's been an absolute blast. Something that we've been thinking about and working towards for a very long time. We were very happy to have been able to release that, and it's something that we're really having a lot of fun with. Just the same way that we have fun with these JaARs.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more stressful, but that's not stopping us. These stories have been great.
Yeah.
Right? These chapters from The Gathering Storm have been phenomenal, and we've loved every minute of it. So
thank you, Django Wexler. Yeah,
exactly. Thank you so much for your high quality writing. I saw somebody online today, on Twitter today, talking about how much they loved Django Wexler's story here, The Gathering Storm, and talking about, somebody literally said, the next audiobook credit I get on Audible, I'm going to use on a Django Wexler story.
Nice.
That's brilliant, and it's exactly what these opportunities for these authors are supposed to mean.
Right.
It's supposed to be them getting their name out there to a new kind of audience so that they can show off their skills, and that we can see who they are as authors, to maybe find new authors to want to read stories from.
Right.
And I think that's great. That's exactly what you want. And I hope that the same happens for Kate Elliott with this upcoming book, because like I said, I am truly excited for it.
Same here.
But for now, since this was chapter 9, next week we will have chapter 10 of The Gathering Storm by Django Wexler. We will review it. We will read it. I'm sure we will love it, because we have really enjoyed all these other ones. This week was maybe the slightest dip down, but in the grand scheme of Magic stories recently, this is still a very, very good story. So please don't misunderstand. And as with any and all of the myriad of ridiculous topics that we talked about this week, we would love to hear from any and all of you about any and all opinions and thoughts and concerns and questions that you might have. That is what the comment section is for, and that is a good way for you to join us, and as Amy said, the rest of this community in supporting each other and showing off our...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
It's important now more than ever. We will figure this out one way or the other. So, thank you all genuinely so very much for watching. Thank you in advance for any and all comments that you might leave, thoughts, concerns. Check us out on Twitter and Facebook. Talk to us. We would love to hear from you. Check out that second channel. We would love it. And don't forget that shout out and give some love to our friend Dave, twitch.tv/DAM314. He's a fantastic human and definitely worth your time, one way or the other. But for now, from the Geek for All, now family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.